Our February meeting. Good to see each and every one of you here. Before we begin, we got some house cleaning rules to take care of, I guess is what we'll call this. And we need to read this statement. This meeting of the Public Safety Committee is being conducted electronically pursuant to Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order 16. I'd ask for a motion that conducting the meeting electronically is necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare in the light of coronavirus. Do I have that motion?
So moved. Chair, so moved. Second.
Have the second and the motion. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gurley?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherino?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes. Thank you, committee. We'll move on now into our business. First of all, we're going to ask for a approval of our minutes. I believe I heard our vice chairman out there. Vice chairman, have you seen those minutes?
I have, Chairman, and I conclude that they are correct, and I move for them to be accepted.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Commissioner Sherino, call the roll.
Commissioner Gurley?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherino?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes. All right, item 2, we'll go into our Public Safety Director report and emergency management. Director Clark. Like you're thawed out.
Thank you, Chairman. On the report for January the 18th through February the 18th, we have again monitored COVID-19, which we are seeing much improvement with that. Our hospitals are stable. We're seeing a lot more bed availability. We also had here recently a pretty extensive winter storm that our partners with street and highway departments, along with our emergency services, responded to multiple motor vehicle accidents, falls, trips, things like that on the ice. Very, very good teamwork as far as our communities and Smyrna, Laverne, Eagleville, and we were able to clear some roads pretty quickly. Also, we had a few field responses last month, one being an unplanned landing of an aircraft out in Christiana, which they made an emergency landing due to a motor failure. Everybody was safe, but we had to attend to that. And then also, we had some overturned semis, which spilled some fuel. That's about all I have, Chairman.
Any questions on the report? Gentlemen?
Move to approve the report, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made to approve. Have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Commissioner P, call the roll.
Commissioner Sherino?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Gurley? Commissioner Gurley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes. Do you have a grant that
I apologize. Carrie was out this morning. This is the acceptance of the EMPG grant to finalize that funding for 2021.
Okay, I just saw that it was in the report.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve that grant.
Second.
Have a second. Any
Mr.
discussion?
Chairman.
Mr. P.?
Yeah, Chris, is this that annual grant that we look at that we share with Murfreesboro, or is this a different one?
This is this yearly grant that we receive from the state that supplements our budget for emergency management.
Okay.
Total project's, I think, 109,000.
Yes, sir. 353.
Okay. Okay, call the roll.
Commissioner Rather,
Yes.
Mr. P.,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Commissioner Garley,
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon,
Yes.
Chairman Reed.
Yes. Okay, I don't have anything else. All right, ambulance service.
Can I ask a quick question?
You may.
This just out of curiosity. We were told months and months ago by national people, CDC and everybody else, that the virus may slow down in the wintertime. So are we seeing very encouraging numbers because the weather is getting colder? And this may not be a question for you, it may be somebody else, but are we anticipating, because we're fixing to see 60, 70 degree weather, are we anticipating things are going to turn the other way? That most of this is because it's been colder, people are staying home and not getting out? Does that make sense?
I think that there's several factors there. Number one is the mask mandate that has occurred over a period of time. Number two is that people are heeding precautions as they've seen the numbers go up. Also, I think we're going to start seeing numbers go down next week even more because we were isolated into our homes due to the winter storm, and we've called out schools and colleges and things like that. I don't know that that's probably a public health question, but the numbers that I've seen is that we're on a downhill slide, which is a great thing. I think people are heeding these precautions, and we're getting vaccines in more people. So I think it's a combination of a little bit of everything.
I guess the message would be what we've done, and I agree the vaccines are ramping up, but what we've done over the last couple of weeks, because it was so cold, whether it's 70 degrees, pretend like it's 30.
Correct.
And it's too cold to go out, just keep doing what we've been doing the last couple of weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, and we can turn things around. At the same time, the vaccines are coming in, which is going to make numbers look much better. So I just wondered if y'all had any discussion about that.
Not necessarily the weather, but the precautions that we've put in place over the last few months is really kicking in, and people are heeding those precautions, and they're doing a great job. I think our hospitals are able to treat this virus a little bit better also now that we've gotten a little bit of research and things like that, and these doctors are being very aggressive with COVID-19. So we're starting to see, I hope, the light at the end of the tunnel. According to the numbers, they continue to go down.
Downside to the cold weather and snow and ice, seems like everybody in Rutherford County went to a car wash today. They were backed up 30 cars deep, so stay home, get your car washed in the next couple of days. It'll be all right.
That's right. It's amazing how Saturday afternoon the roads were packed because everybody had been inside all week. We got some thaw, and then everybody was out. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. I tell you what, Commissioner Rather, you sure don't ask easy questions, do you? But I appreciate you doing that. And you're right about those car washes, because Stones River now is actually the only inland saltwater base we've got right now, I guess, after all of this. All right, our ambulance service.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. If it's okay, we would like to go ahead and request our budget amendment first.
You may.
Every year, we receive donations from different organizations and companies. And last year, we had $6,378 left in last fiscal year. We're requesting to amend that into our donations line item. And we've also received checks this year from Nashville Cosmetic and Implant Dentistry for $250, Schwann Cosmetics for $250, and Knights of Columbus for $500. These donations are strictly donations. They have no tax money at all. And we're requesting the total for the donations, $7,628.
This is for this grant, this budget amendment. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept.
We have that motion
Second.
to accept. I think Commissioner P., did you make the second?
Yes.
Okay, we have it motion made and second. Any discussion? If not, call the roll.
Commissioner Gammon,
Yes.
Commissioner Gurley,
Yes.
Commissioner P.,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Commissioner Rather,
Yes.
Chairman Reed. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Director?
Okay, Denise says that she doesn't have anything to report, but she's here. If anybody has any questions for her, I'll be glad to bring her up. So, does anybody have anything for her before I get started? Okay. The number of emergency calls we had for the month of January was 3,178. Number of hospital transfers we did were 55. Had a total number of calls of 3,233. Kept our response times at 6.8. We had 111 deaths. We received $2,775 for the investigations on those deaths. Number of autopsies for the month were 41. We paid out $80,360,000. Year to date, we're at 219, and we've paid out $429,240. On the billing side, we billed $1,535,716. We've collected $638,380. Year to date, we're at $4,901,075. Projected yearly collections are at $8,401,843. We're at a 57% collection rate. Insurance write-off of $418,035 and other write-offs at $385,677. On the non-emergency side, we did 421 calls. We had to decline 25. Total billed was $296,099. Total collections are at $91,842. Year to date, we're at $752,498. Projected collections is at $1,289,997. Got an 88% collection rate. Insurance write-offs for that month was $191,620. And other write-offs were at $22,487. And if you flip over to the next page, I received a letter from a friend of a patient we had picked up and wanted to meet the EMTs and paramedics that had taken care of her friend, and we arranged that meeting for them. And I received a nice letter from a man named Billy out Las Casas. I hope you'll take the time to read this letter. He actually had encounters with us 3 times in one day, and once was with his mother. And it's just a very nice letter that he sent complimenting our paramedics and EMTs. I received a letter from the family of, actually it was through the Sheriff's Department. Lisa Marcioni had sent and reached out that the family of the lady who went missing out, Walter Hill, was just reaching out and just wanted to thank our service and us being part of that team that helped do the search and taking care of her. Have one report from Life Flight on the status of a patient we flew out. I received a nice thank you letter from Elaine Lowe. She was one of our supervisors at the ambulance service. She'd been with us 40 years, and she's finally retired, and I've just told her that it's not the end, it's just a new beginning, and I'm hoping she's doing well. Melanie just talked about the donation that we had received, and I just want to point out one thing before I finish my report. Everybody know it's been a rough year, not just for the ambulance service, but for all the public safety. And you know, with the virus and the weather and all that. But I had some people in my department who have, I've just got to talk about for a minute. They really stepped out of the box and just did stuff that I couldn't have asked them to done. I had people who didn't go home for almost a week for 2 reasons. One, because they wasn't for sure they could get back to work the next day. And so they took it on their own and stayed 3 or 4 days and never went home and continued to help us. And I had people on their days off volunteering, wanting to come in to help, because there was one shift, we had 171 calls, which is a record for us, and then a shift or 2 later, we had like 162 calls. And this is just a character and the professionalism of the people we have working here at this ambulance service. And I think we should be very grateful. I am very grateful to them. And I'm going to be giving about 18 or 20 accommodations out here in the next week or 2 with them. And I will email all the public safety members and the commission if they would like to attend. I would appreciate it if you come, because these people have sacrificed a lot. And I don't think we could ask any more out of them. And I'd also like to thank the City of Murfreesboro, County Road Greg Brooks, the Mayor in Laverne, Town of Smyrna, for salting our drives at the ambulance service, because we literally couldn't get in and out. And to be honest with you, it's not something we deal with every winter, and I didn't think about it till the last minute, and it was almost too late. But we all came together, and so I just wanted to reach out and thank all of them publicly. And I'm going to brag again, we didn't wreck one single ambulance during all of this. I think Scotty had to go pull 2 or 3 out of a driveway, but as far as I know, there's no damage. Is that right, Scotty? So not only were they dedicated and staying at work and coming in to help, they didn't crash out our equipment. So I'm very proud of that. So I just want to thank them, and that's all my report, sir.
Okay, sir. Director, don't you have some folks here tonight?
Yes, sir. I thought there was going to be a lot more, but a lot of them are working tonight.
That's good.
And I was actually the ones I was just bragging about, I was actually going to have them come up here and stand up here. And the ones that are here, I'll be glad to do that, but the rest of them are working. And It's however I'll be glad to bring them up here, sir, if you'd like for me to.
If they made the effort to be here tonight, bring them up.
Okay, if all my staff and people would come up that was involved in this, come up here and stand beside me, I'd appreciate it. Of course, this is Scotty. He's my fleet manager. Everybody knows him. And this is Josh Wright. He is one of the supervisors. Next to him is Steve Hart. Everybody knows him. And next to him is Tiffany White. And there's about 15 or 20 others that aren't here tonight. But I just wanted you to take a look. And these are the caliber of people we have here. Very dedicated, very loyal to this county. So, thank y'all.
That storm broke. Carl didn't mention this, but the first night of that, they had 171 calls that they had to go out on. The next night was over 160 calls that we had ambulances out here dealing with people. I don't know if you noticed it Saturday or not, but when the warm weather hit, the ice that was falling, they actually had 2 calls to go and pick up people that had been hit by ice that was falling. I've got commissioners sitting here, and I know they experienced this all this week too. But you received calls, I'm sure, about my road needs plowing and this needs done and whatever. And that's our responsibility to take those calls and whatever. But I had a good long talk with a mayor from another municipality. And we were discussing this, and I said, you know, what is not understood from a lot of people that have moved here to this county and what we have, Rutherford County is still a southern county. And a storm event like we've just had is not something we experience every year, except when you're a young child trying to go to school and you walk through it. But what we experienced over this past week or better is something that is only experienced like once every 6 years or so. And for a county like Rutherford County to financially fix itself where it handles every mile of Rutherford County, which is in road miles is something close to 1,000 miles, is not financially feasible to do so. So we're not set up to do that. Well, we can't buy enough salt trucks and blades and be where we can go out here and work every road that we have. So we have to do what we have done in the past. And what that's been is we hope for Mother Nature to come around and to let sunshine come around and help us, which finally what it did. And you know, as growing up as a child, your parents always told, well, just wait till tomorrow and it'll soon come around. But I think when we look at all our first responders and what they've had to deal with this past week, we should be very proud of what we've had here. We've had a group of people who have been servant-minded. You've seen these individuals that didn't even go home just so they could be ready for the job. I know we had firefighters did the same thing, to get out in this kind of weather to fight fires. A sheriff's department that went out and if I was a lawman, I'd ask you, what in the world are you doing out here to begin with in some of this? But they went out and handled the accidents, and they did all of this. And I saw examples of individual deputies and policemen actually stopping and playing with kids and doing that sort of thing. But we've got some people that showed exactly what it means to be a Rutherford Countian. and to get out there and do the things that, and I think we should be very proud of that. In fact, I told that mayor, I said, you know, and that was Sunday when we were talking about this yesterday, I said, when you go to church this morning, when you say those prayers, I think we need to pray for the fact that we live in this county, that we have these type of people to do these things, and we shouldn't be placing our emphasis on the fact of that icy road that we had to experience, but most importantly is that we went through this and we didn't get any of these people hurt, but yet they did their job. And I think that's the important thing we got here. We got some great folks, guys, and I think it's important that people understand this. I think Rutherford County come through this well. Y'all have heard me say it too many times, so goes Rutherford, so goes the state of Tennessee. And I think Rutherford proved itself this past week. Commissioner Rather, did you have something?
Well, we always save comments to the last, and none of y'all are here. So I won't say this while everybody's here. I had a conversation in the last half hour about the Rutherford County I grew up in and others grew up in is not the same Rutherford County. But that's the part that encourages me being on public safety. I love being on public safety. I love hearing the reports and what's going on. And all the way from the sheriff's office to Paul's juvenile detention, to work center, recovery, probation, all the way down the list. Fire. There's a lot of Rutherford County that some of us grew up in that doesn't exist. But all these folks, it still exists. That part of Rutherford County still exists. We take care of people with professionalism, compassion, dedication, and that's not going to change. And it's encouraging to think about the old Rutherford County that's gone, but there's a part of Rutherford County it's going to stay here for a long time. And Director Cope, you need to make sure he turns his shirt back into the workhouse when this meeting's over.
Thank you, sir. All right, I think we need a motion to approve this report.
Mr. Chairman, just one thing real quick.
Yes, sir.
I failed to mention, I needed to thank the Sheriff's Department too. I took on the task also of trying to help the hospital get some of the nurses to work, and I overloaded myself and couldn't keep up with it. And the sheriff was kind enough to have some deputies to help me not really make a fool out of myself, because I accepted a challenge that I couldn't complete. And so I just wanted to thank the sheriff and his department for helping that, and wanted to thank Public Safety Director Clark too for making the contacts for me for the salt and get my station salted. So that's all I have, sir.
Chairman.
Was that Commissioner Gammon?
It was.
Yes, sir.
Kind of beat me to the punch there, but I had surgery Thursday at the St. Thomas Hospital. And when I was checking in, that's the very thing that the nurses and staff were bragging about, was that the public safety had came to their aid, and they could not say enough about the employees and people that were there for them. So it's such a good teamship, and I was going to mention that. But as usual, you're on the ball and bringing things up here, sir. But I congratulate you on that, and that's always a benefit to the citizens that we get those emergency people in there and stuff.
Well, they're very much appreciated, and I hope they understand that we do appreciate them for what they do. Do we have that motion? Commissioner Sereno?
Yes, sir. I just would like to share. I came from Laos. Murfreesboro is my first time in Rutherford County for about 10,000 miles. I really enjoyed it. Last month, when I attended the Wellness Council, the assistant commissioner from Nashville, they're talking about different county, they get to Rutherford. They said Rutherford is very healthy and wellness county, and so that's wonderful news. That's why I'm so happy to share with the mayor and the other people too.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second. Have a second. Commissioner Phillips, call the roll.
Commissioner Cerino,
Yes.
Commissioner Rather,
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon,
Yes.
Commissioner Gurley,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips.
Yes.
Chairman Reed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fire and rescue. Sir.
For the month of January, we had 536 calls of service. Eight of those were structure fires, 5 were vehicle fires. We had 301 medical calls. We ran 64 MVAs. 34 of those were with injuries, 30 were without injuries, and 2 extrications. Sunday was very busy for us. I think when everybody come in the shift, the roads were pretty clear. Within an hour or so, everything started icing over. We had 50 calls Sunday. 90% of those were MVAs. And between Christiana Volunteer Fire Department, Allenville Fire Department, and Rutherford County Fire Rescue on the interstate, answering all the MVAs, and there's nothing like being on the interstate and you look up and see 2 18-wheelers coming down the interstate sideways. Sheriff's Office did a tremendous job keeping the traffic off of us and working with us and being able to shut the interstate down when it needed to be. THP was a big help also. I appreciate the working relationship we have with both those agencies. We had a lot of trees down out in the Kittrell area. Kittrell Volunteer Fire Department spent almost all day Sunday cutting up trees, clearing roads. Had one patient that was on oxygen. They were able to, that lost power, they were able to use a generator and bring that power back up for that patient until the service was connected. So everybody pretty much jumped in and did a great job Sunday when the ice storm hit. The next page is our total call volume and our reports for volunteer fire departments. We had 9 total structure fires, 7 brush fires, 11 illegal burns, 6 vehicle fires, 3 hazmats. That number at the bottom, that can't be right for a month. 87 MVAs looks kind of high. We had 2 extrications. I know, no, that number is correct because we ran 60 of them. We ran 13 mutual aid calls total. There was 9 fire alarms, and then 160 other calls for a total call volume of 606 calls. This is the next page is the structures that were damaged from fire in January that were sent to the COVID department. There was 11 of those. Very busy month last month for structure fires. The next page is our fire investigation report and the conclusions of what those fires, what caused those fires. And then I had the next page is unauthorized illegal burning report. Y'all will remember we had a couple of months ago, we had y'all approved the emergency services contract for the volunteer fire departments. I've got all those back. There was some negotiations between the volunteers and the mayor. We're still waiting on Eagle to return theirs. I think they kind of going toward a more municipality contract, and so I think that's still in negotiations. I'll bring those contracts to you next month. Working with Ed, there was a few changes to what y'all agreed upon, but most of those were at the request of the volunteer fire departments. And I think I know the county mayor met with them and was able to iron those out where everybody was in agreement. They all been signed, with the exception of Eagle, and I'll bring that back to y'all next month to review and to approve. Also, I received probably the same letter that Carl was talking about from Mr. Paul Williams. We had a lady that come up missing, had dementia out on Lebanon Highway, and of course they always send the Sheriff's Department to back us up, and Tennessee Highway Patrol was there, EMS was there, because anytime we have a patient out in the elements, we always have EMS there standing on by. We launched our drones. We were unable to locate her because somebody had picked her up and carried her home, and then had seen that somebody was missing and notified the family and was reconnected the next day. We did have another call where we launched the drones for an 11-year-old child that ran off in the woods and was barefoot, and I think it was about 15 degrees that night. And because of the thermal imaging on our cameras on the drones, we were able to locate that young man within 13 minutes. So that's been a big advantage in those type of situations. And that pretty much concludes my report, with the exception of a budget amendment.
Okay, we'll deal with your report first. Any questions on the report? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Commissioner Phillips, call the roll.
Commissioner P.,
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon,
Yes.
Commissioner Gurley,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherino,
Yes.
Commissioner Rather,
Yes.
Chairman Reed.
Yes.
If you recall, we had a grant with a FEMA grant for fire alarms, and I asked the permission to extend that grant. Y'all granted that to us. This is just moving the money out of unfunded balance to reinforce the grant. The county's portion was 5%, was $3,815. And so this is just appropriation to cover the grants, a little overtime for installing those, and then of course the Medicare and all the other things that go along with their payroll.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion approved. Commissioner Phillips, have a second?
Second.
Second. Commissioner Rather, call the roll.
Commissioner Gurley,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
That me?
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherino,
Yes.
Commissioner Rather,
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon,
Yes.
Commissioner P.,
Yes.
Chairman Reed.
Yes.
Also, the next thing I have is separate, in case you want to look through it. I've been working with the county attorney and to come up with a lease agreement for Christiana Volunteer Fire Department. Christiana's station is located on Sledge Road, out close to Epps Mill toward the interstate. And because there's a railroad tracks in between the area they cover, they're the only volunteer fire department that has a Class 6. If they had an extra station, they could go, probably, I feel comfortable, they could go to a Class 5 with all the other volunteer fire departments. And so we've got a station that we use, that was located on the corner of Midland and Rock Springs. And it's kind of a two-bay building. And I've given that station to them to let them run out of it. They got 2 trucks in there, a brush truck and a pumper. They've been running out of that station, and then when they want a lease agreement, they've taken over the propane and the electrical of that station. They asked that I come up with a contract with them, between us and them, for them to run out of that station. And I believe once we get this all tied up, they're going to ask for an ISO rating, and I feel, but confident that because they have a station on both sides of the tracks, that will allow them to get to Class 5. I think that's been the holdup for many years. So this is just a lease that the county attorney come up. I think it's like $10 for the 10 years that the agreement is under. And of course, if they want to continue that after that, they have that option. But this would just allow them to have a lease, something, a legal document binding that they have permission to run out of that station. And I seek your approval for that.
Do we have discussion or a motion for this lease?
This says draft. You said you're working with the county attorney.
Yes, what's a draft till y'all approve it, and,
Okay, so this is it.
yeah, Christiana's looked at it, and they feel comfortable with it, and so, if they feel comfortable with it, so if y'all are good with this and agree to it, then we'll sign it, fill it out, and it'll be notarized.
Where's the exact location of that station, Larry?
It's on the corner of Rock Springs, Midland, and it's on the corner of Midland Road and Rock Springs, Midland. I think there's a convenience center right across the road from it.
It used to be the Rockvale.
It was Rockvale's second station.
It was a Rockvale station at one time.
Christiana has about 4 or 5 really strong volunteers around there, and they respond at the station and back us up on a lot of calls, and we back them up on quite a bit in that area.
Mr. P., they have been operating out of that station for a while anyway. They asked to do that when they found out that nobody was actually using that station, and a lot of their firemen come from over that way anyway, and they didn't see why going past that station to go all the way over to the Christiana station, why not use that station anyway? Because they do have firemen in that area already working in that area. So that was a station that wasn't being used that gives them an opportunity to do that.
They've been using that station for about 3 years, and they've did some painting, and they even put up a sign, Christiana Volunteer Fire Department, on the building, and it just works out real well because, like I say, they got about 5 guys live right there on top of that station, and they can respond to that pretty quick instead of having to drive all the way over from Midland Road all the way out to Alps Mill out there by the interstate where their other station is.
And it has a Christiana address.
Yeah.
Well, if that's going to help us keep our ISO ratings down, I'm all for it.
It's going to help them because they're 6, and as soon as we get this document signed, they're going to call for an ISO rating. Like I say, the one thing that hurt them is because their district covered both sides of the railroad tracks, but if that ISO looks at it, if the train's coming out there and they're blocked, then they can't answer their calls. This allows them to have one on each side of the tracks.
But we had the same problem at Fosterville in the past.
Yes, sir.
Have a motion.
I so move.
Have a motion to move. Commissioner Sereno, have a second.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rather, call the roll.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. P.,
Yes.
Mr. Gammon,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorley,
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Mr. Rather,
Yes.
Chairman Reed.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Radio system, Mr. Rogers.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Okay.
Quick little update. We're presently testing the system now with all the tones in the county with fire and EMS. So EMS dispatch is scheduled to move back the morning of this coming Wednesday. And when they make that move, they'll be dispatching on the new radio system. We're still installing mobiles and SO cars and ambulances. I've asked Motorola to have the remaining base station installs placed on the calendar so we can begin to schedule those. That'd be for the highway department, Paul's, juvenile detention, as well as the schools. I have the tower mapping information back for the Lynch Hill so we can reach out to Coffee and Bedford County for some additional maintenance funding. We had a problem with the AT&T backup fiber to EMS dispatch, so we're making arrangements for another route to access the system. And that's all I have at this moment.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Rogers? Anyone?
I've got a question or two. Peter, have you looked at the new proposed fire joint ambulance stations that are out there? And there were some questions when we were reviewing that the other day about the antennas that they've got. They were going to place it on a flagpole, do Anyway, have you had a chance to review that?
Yes, sir, and the size of the base antenna that we're using presently is pretty much the size of a shoebox, and we've been mounting all those on one of those satellite dish arms that a lot of people have. It's very small, and we've been attaching that somewhere generally on the soffit area of the buildings.
Okay, I'd seen the one that you put out there at Ketrel and was thinking it'd be pretty small space, but I just wanted to make sure we had that covered. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
We'll move in now for OSHA. Good evening, Mr. Elam.
Good evening. For the month of January 2021, and you will see this starts a new year in your totals for 2021, so your year-to-dates will be the same numbers. For January 2021, we had a total of 18 accidents, and again, the year-to-date was 18 also. Total recordables was 12, restricted day claims was 9, lost day claims was 1, and other recordables was 2. On the next page, on the job injury claims, you will see there was a total of 18 year-to-date. 2020 you had 26, and 2019 you had 13. Next page, on the job injury incurred dollars. For 2021, it's estimated to be $72,000. 2020 was $76,000, and 2019 was $22,000. And on the last page, you'll see the cause of injuries, falls, slips, and trips. Their Board of Ed had 4, County General had 4, struck or injured by, Board of Education had 1, County General had 1, strain or injured by, County General had 1, cut, puncture, or scrape, Board of Ed had 1, County General had 3, burn, scald, heat, or cold exposure, Board of Ed had 1, County General had 1, and miscellaneous you had 1. Breakdown County General, there was 4 at the Sheriff's Department, 2 at Fire and Rescue, and 1 at the Health Department, for a total of 10. County General, and a total of 8 for the Board of Ed. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? If
Move
not,
to approve the report, Mr. Chairman.
have the motion to approve. Have a second?
Second.
Second. Commissioner Rather, call the roll.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherino? Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorley?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Recovery Court. Good evening.
Budget amendment, do you want me to do that first or last?
If you would like, go right ahead.
Okay. The very last page of the report I provided includes a budget amendment. It is funding that was already there. It's a request to move money from the 413 SAMHSA to the 399 SAMHSA, and the 499 other supplies to the 399 other contracted services. And the reason for that money to be moved is when we stopped doing drug screens in our office and started using a third-party vendor, it needed to be under the correct line item. So it's no new funding, it's just moving the money so that we can pay from the appropriate line item.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion
Second.
approved, Commissioner P. Have second, Commissioner Gurley. Call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorley?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherino?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes. Okay, your report.
On our monthly report for January, you will see that we have 5 new participants. We had 1 person who self-terminated from our mental health court program. We currently have a waiting list, but it's just because of the courts being closed. They will reopen on March 15th, so we expect to have an influx of people. On page, I think it's 5, maybe 7. The new drug screen report that I've included shows you how many positives and negative screens that we've had since we've swapped over to AvraHealth in the month of January. On this report, you will see that there are some that were positive and it was due to medication. I'm working out a way to differentiate that for you. We did submit our application to the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services for the annual grants after that went through the full commission last month. We have staff that is diligently working on writing up the BJA grant for the expansion of the DUI court that went through the full commission in January. And I would like to say thank you to one of our office staff members, Lindsay Davis, and Judge Eichhod's assistant, Jessica Schoenfield, who are helping us to write that grant. They're working very diligent on that, as well as doing their regular job duties. And that is my report, unless there's some questions.
Any questions anyone has?
Move to approve the report, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made to approve. Do we have a second? Have a second? Second. Commissioner Sereno. Call the roll.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorley?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes. Thank you. All right, probation court. Good evening.
Good evening. So for my January report, the total expenditures for the month of January was $111,145.30. The total revenue with circuit and general sessions clerks combined equaled $7,191.40 for a total revenue for the month of January equaling $19,143.40. With the difference from the expenditures versus the revenue collected, that gave us a difference of $92,001.90. The total amount of money that was turned over to the clerk's office to be collected for probation fees in the month of January was $7,034. The amount of money that was not entered, those that failed to enter a payment agreement, equaled out to $10,888.50. For the total fiscal year thus far, $80,870.75 has been turned over to the clerk's office to collect on payment agreements. And the amount of money so far this fiscal year of those that failed to enter payment agreements, that equaled up to $75,718.25. And that would be my report for January.
Any questions on the report? Not have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the report, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Commissioner Gammon, call the roll.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorley?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes. And committee, it is the season to have budget review, and this is our first.
Yay.
So if you'd like to go through that worksheet, we'll do that.
Okay. All right. So just go by line item. I just want to touch base on everything. I've made notes out to the to the right of some changes. Those that don't have notes, down towards the bottom, those remain the same. Our items 101 down through 212, those are employee-related costs. You'll see that I noted 20 employees. That is not 20 additional new employees. I just wanted to clarify that just clarifies the number of staff. We kept communication the same. A big difference that we'll see on this next fiscal year's budget is line item 312, contracts with private agencies. I did adjust the number, and as we get further down in line items, you'll see the money that was actually removed from a different line item up until the contract to cover those costs. This would be for a 6-hour window for the drug screens for an annual cost. Our cost too, we are set up for a patient pay, meaning those that have the ability to pay and would like to will pay for their drug screens the day of the service. So I just allocated that to be worst case scenario at an average of 500 drug screens a month. 317 would be our data processing. There is a reduction based off of last fiscal year. It was noted that there would be licensures for a move into our new building, so that is not anything that would be in addition for this next fiscal year. Line item 333 for licenses. This is a new line item for our department. This is for our DUI license. That is to be split with recovery court. That is an $810 cost annually to keep up that license for the Prime for Life DUI education class. You'll see maintenance agreements. There is an increase of $250 there. I did want to make note that there is an additional copier that will go in the second floor. In the building that we're at now, we're all on the same floor in a closer proximity. Moving into our new building, there will actually be an additional copier on the second floor. There is not a maintenance agreement tied to that actual copier, but they do charge per number of copies, and it is a black and white copier because that was a cheaper option. So we did increase that by $250 just based to cover the cost of any copies that are made. On 335 and 336, because we are moving into a different building, those line items, to my understanding, will go under Ben Mankins' budget. Our postal charges, there was no note to be made. I foresee that will remain the same. We have taken a lot of advantage of using electronic notification when we can, so it does help that cost remain low. The biggest and best change would be line item 351 for rentals. Our lease agreement will be no longer when we move into our new building. Our current lease is $8,500 a month. So on average, typically, with the exception of this year, that would equal up to $102,000 a year that we've been spending on rental expenses for that lease of 309. 355 travel, I did reduce that. It is difficult with COVID coming. Last year, it just kind of put a wrench in everything of, potential trainings and travel. I don't foresee there being any large conferences that we'll be able to attend outside of Middle Tennessee, so we want to stay local. So hopefully we'll have the ability to do some type of trainings this year versus last year. Our contracted services, there was a slight change in that just based off the number of weeks and the typical number of hours that they work. A new line item also is $425 for gasoline. We were given a car, an Impala. We haven't had the ability to have a line item for gasoline, so we've been paying for that. out of a different line item. So this year, we would like to add that line item, $200 for gas. We stay local anytime that we do deliver something, food or clothes or anything else that's going to be local. We do request that if they live outside of the county, that they meet us at the county line. But typically, we don't take large travels in the Impala. Then we have office supplies. I kept office supplies the same. I don't foresee there being a large increase of anything as far as being needs for the new office, but that is always something that very well could be there. Again, utilities, 452, we will no longer be in a private leased building, we'll be in a county-owned, so that amount will be removed from this budget. Other supplies and materials, that was reduced, and you'll see there's a decrease of the average amount of drug screens. Prior to, we were using 2 different vendors. That cost was actually in that line item for both vendors. Since we've contracted with AverHealth, I just moved that to the actual contracted services for those drug screens. Data processing equipment, you'll see a reduction in that line item as well. We have been added to OIT's recurring PC transition. When those PCs become outdated, the ones that we have remaining, they will be transitioned as OIT sees fit and is needed, and so that was not a need that we had this fiscal year, and that would wrap up the budget for the next year.
Okay. Any questions, Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, when we met with all the department heads just a few weeks ago and kicked off this budget process, I asked all the department heads to work with the commission and try to keep their budgets flat. And of course, this is the first one you'll see. And this is pretty flat except for our increases that you'll see here because of our benefits have gone up on our hospitalization, major medical. So I have reviewed it, met with Ms. Phillips, and it's my recommendation for the committee to accept this budget. She's done a good job. I know she's excited about getting in a new building.
Very.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
Just one. I think the mayor has asked for a zero-based budget. This is pretty close. It's less than 0.5%, if I'm not mistaken. I move that we approve and forward onto the budget.
On the budget. Okay. Have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rather. Call roll.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorley,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Rather,
Yes.
Chairman Reed.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for a job well done on the
Thank you.
budget there. Correctional Work Center.
While he's coming up, Mayor, I'm not sure that approval is the right word. It should be forward probably to the budget with some type
Positive
of
recommendation.
affirmative recommendation.
We knew what you meant, but that's it, a positive recommendation. Yes, sir.
Afternoon. I have 2 items to submit tonight. Our first is our report. You'll find included our work center minutes from our board. And I'll try to skip through this pretty quick so we can get to the budget. Our work release program, which is still going fantastic. Our yearly activity report, no significant changes there. And then our monthly report, worker report, with the total combined estimated savings of $62,830. We've been staying pretty busy with the exception of, obviously, for last week. didn't get very many people out to work, but we got a very, very clean jail. We kept them busy inside. And that is my report.
We have the report. Any questions or a motion?
Motion to approve the report, Mr. Chairman.
Motion approved.
Second.
And second, Commissioner Gurley. Call the roll.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Gurley,
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon,
Yes.
Commissioner Rather,
Yes.
Chairman Reed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, your budget review.
Next is our budget review, and if we can skip down to line 307, that skips the items that are supplied by finance. Our phone bill obviously stayed the same. Next item would be 320, our dues and memberships. That is our K-9 training and our membership with ACA. We kept that the same at $1,000. Evaluation and testing on 322, that's keeping our guys with their CDL license, $500. That did not change from last year. Our 330, our operating lease payments, that's supplied by Lisa in Finance and Enterprise. Those are our vehicles. Over on 334, maintenance agreements, we have kept that number at same at $40,000. That's our copier, our pest control, UniFirst, NCIC, TBI, Max Shred, dish machines, a little bit of everything. Our 335, which is our maintenance and repair services to the building, those are all your building repairs. We kept that the same at $45,000. Let's see, down to 336, that's maintenance and repair service equipment, and those are the equipment repairs that we have to, for instance, our food service, our laundry services, things of that nature. We kept that the same at $25,000. 338 be maintenance and repair services to vehicles. We dropped that $2,000. We still have some vehicles that were not, we didn't receive through last year's enterprise lot, so those still need some repairs occasionally. So we did deduct $2,000 from that line. 340 medical and dental services. Those are mostly for our x-rays. We dropped that $500 down to $1,000. Working with the sheriff's office, they've been gracious enough to let us take inmates over there and use their airport scanner for doing x-rays, so that has cut down on some of that, so we changed that. 348 postal charges, we kept that the same at $300. 399 our other contracted services, which is our medical services with Rudd Management and our Summit food service bill, and we kept that at the same at $880,000. 399 other contracted services, that is a grant, and that was supplied by Ms. Reba. 401 animal food and supplies, that's our supplies and vet bills for our K-9. We kept that the same at $3,000. 410 custodial supplies, we kept that the same at $41,000. 411 data processing supplies, we deducted $500 from that, brought that to $3,500. 413 drugs and medical supplies, that's our nicotine and drug tests. That's staying the same at $3,000. 418 equipment and machinery parts, that'll stay the same at $2,000. Gasoline, that'll stay the same at $13,000, and that's for our vehicles and our generator. 431 law enforcement supplies, of course, in most of these we did deduct last year also, so we did keep that the same at $2,000. Office supplies at $435, kept that the same at $7,000. $441, prisoners' clothing, we did deduct that $1,000. At the end of each budget year, we assess what our needs are as far as inmate clothing, and we've done really well in the past few years keeping those jumpsuits and uniforms in pretty good shape and spending only what we have to, so we're going to deduct $1,000 from that. Uniforms in $451. We're going to do the same thing with our staff's uniforms and deduct $1,000 from that. And like I said, we've done a pretty good job with keeping a good supply of those. 452 utilities, kept that the same at $300,000. That's our water, electric, gas, all the things that keep us running. 499 other supplies and materials, $15,000. That's our inmate hair clippers, our recreational supplies, wristbands, evidence bags, break room supplies, flags, a little bit of everything comes out of that. Other supplies and materials, that's 499,007. That is also part of the grant, and that's gas and bus vouchers for inmate families who are part of a program that we run. And then if you can see the total down there, last year's was $4,734,546. This year is $4,748,904. We did not raise any lines, did not ask for any new employees. The only thing that only thing we did was actually deduct, and of course, what kept us a little bit over was out of our control when that was submitted by finance.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bill, it's been a while since I've slept since we went over your budget. Did you include, Mr. Chairman, they're in need of a new tilt skillet. Is this included?
It's not included, Mayor. We talked about hopefully we're going to have some money left over that we may amend and move over.
Yeah.
So we were going to wait until later on before we make that
until
decision.
later into the budget to see if you got money left over. We'll review that probably at the end of April, 1st of May. See if they need that. It's about a $25,000 tilt skillet for the kitchen. I mean, it cooks a lot.
And all the equipment that we have there has been there since the building was built. So they've taken really good care of it.
And you've tried to repair it several times.
We have, and multiple times.
Yeah. But we are, in the governor's state of the state, we are getting an additional grant that will be coming in July 1. So if you don't have it, then we'll be able to take care of you. Okay. But I've reviewed it, Mr. Chairman, and make a favorable recommendation of the committee to accept the budget.
Committee?
Make a motion to accept.
Motion's been made to accept.
I'll second that motion to forward to budget with a positive recommendation.
Okay. Call the roll.
Mr. Gorley?
Yes.
Mr. Gammon?
Yes.
Mr. Rather?
Yes.
Mr. Sherino?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. P?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you.
Juvenile detention?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Excuse me. So you have in front of you our monthly report for January. Probably the first thing you notice is that we haven't got any of our checks yet. The mail quit running, and we're waiting. So I don't think there's going to be any problem receiving any of that money. I think it was just an issue with the mail didn't run like it normally did. I do want to point out that Rutherford County Juvenile Detention got another high school graduate in January, so that's going to be 2 that we have for this fiscal year. He is actually probably going to be enrolling in some college classes while he's with us too. We've got it worked out where that's something that he can do. So we're pleased and proud of him. I wanted to also note that although it's not on any of the reports, that we were able, thankfully, y'all had given us an opportunity to hire a part-time pastor, and Pastor Mike Davis was utilized and came in during the snowstorm for a young man who was staying with us who lost his father, and we were pleased and proud that we had that to offer that young man while he was with us, because it was a difficult time for him. If there are any questions about anything specifically, I will happily answer them. I did want to also mention, it will embarrass him, but my captain, Leon Caesar, actually rode all over Rutherford County and one surrounding county, and brought some of our employees into work that couldn't make it. So he went above and beyond and got some of those employees in, and I appreciate that. And I'll answer any questions that you have.
Okay, any questions on the report?
Motion to approve the report.
Motion's been made to approve. Commissioner P., do you have a second?
Okay.
Second. Commissioner Rather, call the roll.
Commissioner Gammon?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorley?
Yes.
Commissioner P.?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Sereno?
Yes.
Mr. Rather?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes. Okay,
Budget?
we're ready for budget.
All right. So we have kept everything the same in our line items as the year before, except for line item 317, which that is our jail management program. It's a soft tech support fee. That went up $125. Except for, as has previously been mentioned, the employee-related line items and insurance, etc. We are down a little bit on our budget from last year, and that's because we had you'll recall we had a long-term employee transfer to another department, and that just kind of brought our employees' numbers down a little bit. So that's what the reduction is from. So it's basically flat this year. I can be specific on any of the line items if you would like for me to.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ms. Duke, when we met this morning going over your budget, the line item, and the reason I asked this question, after I met with you, I met with Ms. Bigby with Youth Services, and she is using soft tech management software program as well.
Yes.
Is that something that could be combined, or is it a different layer of the software?
We use, it's the same program, and we view each other's info.
Okay. She was talking about, excuse me, she was talking about a new program that actually is better called Quest.
Okay.
And kind of waiting on the Office of the Courts to see if they were going to be able to do this on a statewide contract. So I'd kind of like to hold that while she's doing some checking. I'm going to do some checking with the Office of the Courts as well to see, because she said it, and of course I haven't seen it, but she said it's a better program. Quest it's got more data, and of course data is so important in today's time, so if we'll just hold that. But other than that, Mr. Chairman, I think she's got a good budget, and I would recommend a favorable recommendation.
Any question or motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept this proposed budget and move forward to budget with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, sir. Have a second.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Sereno, call roll.
Commissioner Phillips? Yes. Commissioner P? Commissioner P?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon? Commissioner Gammon? Commissioner Gurley?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. All right, pause. Good evening.
Evening, sir. You have my report for January in front of you. You'll see that we had 310 animals come into the shelter. We had a live release rate for our dogs of 95.7%. Cats were 89.7% and overall 90.3%. Surgery programs were a little bit down for January because we were closed for COVID, and so was the TNR program. We've traveled, still travel 11,000 miles. Officers were still staying busy. If you'll see year to date, our live release rate is still 92.7%. If you want to go over to the bite report, our bite reports, they go calendar year. That goes based off the state. You can see that for January we had 25 bites. 4 of those were tested, none came back positive. Other exposures, we had 3 reported. 1 of those was tested and it did come back positive. It was a skunk in the Blackman zone that had gotten into someone's yard and had exposed their dog. And then the last page of the report is the animal outcome graph, just so you can visually see the live release rates versus euthanasia rates and our other releases in a different type format. And that is all my report, sir.
Okay. You've seen the report.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion approved. Commissioner P, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rather. Call the roll.
Commissioner Gammon? Commissioner Gurley?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes. I believe you have an amendment, is that?
Yes, sir, I do. We're asking to move $5,000 within our budget over to data processing equipment and into other equipment. The other equipment is to add to some additional monies that we have in our budget to be able to purchase a couple of armored vests for some new employees that have a different fit than what we currently have. And then the data processing, we've had a paging relay in our phone system that broke that needs to be replaced. And this also includes some additional money to add a couple of additional cameras and rework some of the cameras within the building. We have one spot of our building right now that none of our cameras can hit very well, and it seems like people know that. We're starting to have more animals abandoned in that particular spot, and Lee with OIT came out and gave us some options there for putting a camera there to try to prevent that.
Okay, you've heard the budget amendment. Do I have a motion to approve or question?
Move to approve.
To approve. Commissioner Gurley, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Commissioner Phillips, call the roll.
Sorry about that. Commissioner Gurley?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Gammon? Chairman Reed?
Yes. All right, I think we're now ready for the budget review.
Yes, sir. Excuse me. You all have a copy of my budget worksheet on your iPads. You will see that we have asked for a small increase. Out of that increase, the majority of that, about 50% or better, is for the salary and the health insurance benefits. The other part of the increase that we're asking for is in line 707. That's to replace our water heater. and also to start a project that will be a multi-year project of doing some floor repairs to the epoxy flooring that we have in our kennel areas. As things have settled over the years there, that we've been in that building now for, I think, 17 years or so. The epoxy in the kennel areas, we're starting to get some pretty major cracks. Those kennel areas are cleaned every single day with water, and we're going to get some water infiltration down in there, and we're afraid of what that's going to do to the floor. So this would be to use the same company that the Sheriff's Department used for their kitchen to come in and re-sand those floors and re-epoxy those. And then, like I said, we would do part of this project over the next several years instead of doing all of it at once. I'll be happy to go through any line item that you have there and answer any questions that you have, but that's kind of the major differences in my budget.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike has done a great job in holding this budget as flat as he possibly could. I will mention one other thing. We are putting out to bid this week a new HVAC system for his building. It's been in dire need for quite some time. It keeps breaking, especially in the stress of the summertime. And one of the systems that you use, I believe, Mike, don't you, it's a special filtration system back in the kennel area.
Yes,
is that correct? It brings in fresh air. So that's why you don't get the smell of a normal kennel when you go into his location out there. But that's not included in the budget. We're going to cover that under the current governor's enhancement grant that we have. So we'll take care of that HVAC, and when we put the bids out this week at purchasing committee. But other than that, I would stand for a positive recommendation on this budget.
If I may, to go along with that HVAC system, it pulls in outside air continuously to keep that smell down, but it also deals with humidity control. When you think about your house unit, except for last week when it was so cold and everybody's was running 24 hours a day, typically your unit gets to where it's the temp you have it set and it turns off until it goes back down. This unit, though, continually runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So when it goes down, you can imagine what it does as far as, first of all, the smell, but also just the humidity control. You can walk in and we'll have water running down the walls and the floors won't dry when folks come in just because it's not pulling in that air and controlling that. So a lot different and a much more sophisticated system than what you'd have in your house.
Okay. Any questions or a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I move to forward this to budget with a positive recommendation. My cat also moves to do that.
Second.
Got a second and a furry motion. So call the roll.
Mr. Sereno?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
P?
Yes.
Mr. Gorley?
Yes.
Mr. Rather?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good night.
Sheriff's Office. You may.
It's that time the THSO grant application process begins March. The three that we will be applying for, the three that we have had since I've been back anyway. So I'm requesting permission to apply for the currently funded programs. No county matches involved. It'll be for police traffic services, $50,000, law enforcement liaison, $20,000, and teen driver safety, $20,000.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the application for those grants.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Rather?
Yes.
Mr. Gorley?
Yes.
Mr. P?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Sereno?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes.
The report financially, I think, is sound, good. We will have to, the jail overtime for our detention officers is low. So I've already spoke with Ms. Nolan about that. And because we've been down, it's going to come from our salaries, and we won't have to ask for any money outside of our budget. Other than that, I think we're doing pretty well this year, but it's been an odd year. So it's hard to predict anything just based off of this year.
Cribble, how many officers are we down?
We're, 15 still in detention. We hire 5 and 3 quit. I mean, it's a weekly occurrence. You got that? He's got the better numbers than I do.
You have that on your SharePoint, if you want to take a look at it. Well, this one has 15. Yeah. Well, this was come out today is what the report you got here, so.
Okay, right now in communications, we're 5 down. We've got some people in the pipeline that are in training, 3 of those positions, so they're not physically on the job, but they're in training, but we're 5 positions uncovered until those 3 come out. We have additional interviews set up to try to get, it's very difficult to find communications officers right now. In patrol, I've got 7 in the academy right now. We won't see those people until July. I've got 3 that are in training here at the SO. And then I've got 1 who has come in, and we're waiting on a transitional training at the academy, so we're waiting on them for a date. So right now I've got 11 positions that are not on the road, but they're either in training or in various stages of training. Detention, I've got 13 down. We've had a class of 7 that started 2 weeks ago, and I've got a class of 5 that started today. So that'll hopefully bolster us where we're only 1 physical position down that's not covered right now. The problem that we've got in detention is, Preble had said, we hire 1 and we lose 2. And we're not losing them to other agencies, we're losing them to outside employment is our problem there. I've got 3 booking officers, which also are detention officers, and I'm down there, and we're trying to get those jobs filled. But that's kind of where we stand right now. So.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay. Have you covered everything? If we could, would like to cover our COVID if you can, if that'd be okay with committee. I've got 122 in detention since February that have tested positive. Right now, currently, we have 0 positive tests in detention. We've tested 2,383 in the detention facility. So out of that, we've had 122 positives. We haven't fared quite as well in the staff. We've tested 398 overall with symptoms, and we have had 98 positives. Right now, this morning, we had 4 that tested positive from over the weekend, and we have identified the source where that came from. So all of them are isolated at this time, not coming to work. Of the total number of 98 positive tests, it's interesting to note that 39% have been in the detention facility, and 39% have been in our certified officers. And of course, these are the people that have contact with everybody. So that's the majority of where our positive tests are coming from, is where they've had outside contact with individuals in the community. So that's where we stand right now on COVID.
Sheriff, I just want, I notice I've got a report here of 688. Is that the number that you have there currently? 685. 685. That's close.
Yeah, do you what?
I give him the morning ones.
Oh, the morning ones, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Somebody got to go home?
I got to go home, yes.
But, gentlemen, I'd suggest you look at that real close. When I was studying it today and looking at it, was the information that's down here below that deals with ages of what we have out there, deals with other things such as how many of them are, what their lifestyle is, what they're dealing with, and this sort of thing. I think that's quite interesting of what we have here within this county. I've always sort of preached this about our academy, the Sheriff's Academy for citizens out here, that if you go to that, you'll find out right quick about your county. It'll give you a lot of information. I think it's something that people need to be involved in, and it'll tell you a lot about what you need to know as far as public safety is concerned. But I just was reading through this today and what we know and what the Sheriff's Department deals with. I think it's very important, and how many we have out there. Does pre-release, is this the reason that our number is down from what we used to have out there? Is that is really working? So I have to give credit to Commissioner P. He worked awful hard on that, doing that research. He and Commissioner Phillips, I believe, were involved in that, and how hard they worked on that, trying to get the pre-release program we've got here in the county.
I could add one of the things that we're watching, and it kind of gives us concern, is that the courts are going to, as it stands right now, going to open back up on April 1st. And we are anticipating a huge jump in our population when that happens. And the reason being is that since the courts have not been in session, there is a good possibility that some people will not appear for their date once it's set. Obviously, when that happens, then we get what we call failure to appear, and then we basically have a warrant to go pick them up for the court. When that happens, then our population is going to increase, and that gives us concern because we really don't know how bad we're going to get hit. But anyway, that's kind of where we stand with it right now.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a question for Preble. Preble, are we prepared this week on the put out the bid for the fencing?
It should. I was supposed to appear March 16th to take the bids, so I'm hoping they're out.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'll check on that in the morning. Mr. Chairman, the sheriff and Preble come to us, and we have the money in the governor's expansion enhancement grant. They're going to need about somewhere around 100,000. That's what we've estimated. It's probably one of the least secured jails in the state of Tennessee. Sheriff, you may want to elaborate, but we need to try to lock her down. He's had homeless coming into Sallyport and et cetera, so we're going to utilize, we're getting to the end of that enhancement grant, so we need to go ahead and obligate the money. So we'll go ahead and use this, and you can explain where all that's going to, the perimeter is going to be.
What we've got, and the mayor is right, is as far as the facility itself, the security of that facility, we're totally on the outside of our building are unsecured. Coupled with that, we find people wandering into Sallyport. This is where prisoners are being brought in, arrestees and so forth. We've got people going in and out to court and everything, and then you've got population walking in there. Also behind our jail, which is supposed to be secured, we find people wandering around out and back. Obviously, this causes a problem as far as drugs and whatnot being dropped off around our facility. And the purpose of what we're trying to do is secure our facility, secure our Sallyport, where we don't have people wandering around all around our jail. One of the other things that we've got on there right now is there's a very small secured area that in the event of a major catastrophe or whatever, we have no place for inmates to go. So one other reason for securing this facility is that we have a fenced area where we can contain people within that fenced area without just turning them out. So it's twofold purpose, one for safety and security, but the other for safety.
Okay. Mr. Rather.
Well, I'm very glad we're doing that. I haven't thought about it much, but now that it's been brought up, I can recall pulling in the Sallyport to unload a very difficult prisoner, and we have to call ahead for a welcoming committee.
Yes, sir.
You know what that is?
Yes, sir.
And not somebody really trying to do something wrong, but they were just wandering from the parking lot, and they were trying to go in to get somebody bonded out or whatever. They don't read the signs. So we're dealing with a very difficult prisoner, and somebody just walks up behind you, which is scary, and they say, "Where'd I go to get my son out of jail?" You know, so yes, there's some of it is somebody trying to do something wrong, but a lot of it is just, it's too unsecure. People just walk around. And I would say you go so far as to fence in the gas pumps.
Well, they would be behind the fencing, yes. But you're perfectly right, and that's not something that happens on a infrequent basis. It's every day. And we spend as much time when we come out. Of course, we've asked all employees when they see people wandering around to stop and escort them off. But that's a daily thing with us. It is.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
You need a motion to approve the report.
I need a motion to approve.
I move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Have the motion approved. Have a second.
I'll second.
Second. Commissioner Gurley, call the roll.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips? Commissioner Gurley?
Yes.
Chairman Reed?
Yes. Any other business?
Mr. Chairman, before the sheriff leaves, I was fortunate enough to get my first COVID shot 2 weeks ago. The unfortunate part of that means that I'm over 70 years old to get that. But the presence of our sheriff's department, with the personnel problems that he has, is still quite impressive. And I'm assuming most of them were resource officers that were there. And I made a special stop just to thank them for what they was doing, and just to compliment the sheriff for utilizing those resource officers in a time when the schools don't need them nearly as much as the citizens of Rutherford County needs them to organize that process. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you guys enough for making that attempt smooth as silk. It ran just as smooth as silk. So good job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Other business? If not, we adjourn.